What is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Meaning of Podcast. I am Ace.
This is RB3.
And this is the podcast where we get into the deeper meaning of your favorite filmmakers' movies. And this one's going to be a good one, guys, because we're going to do a writer and not a director.
Yeah.
Now,
just became a director.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. But he's known for being more of a writer. So technically he is a director. But this is one of the few times that we're choosing to go through his filmography as a writer and a director instead of just as a director, because it would just be one movie if it was a director.
Right.
And that's Mr. Aaron Sorkin, who is probably the most famous screenwriter in all of Hollywood. Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
Yeah, right now, of course. But I really felt like it was important to do this guy. And I feel like he has enough of a filmography and enough of a credit to deserve an entire episode around him. So if we're going to do a screenwriter, we might as well make it Sorkin.
Right.
Agree or disagree?
No, I agree. I mean, I can't think of it. I mean, Tarantino, of course, we could do sometime.
Tarantino,
down the line,
but
he's also a director. He
correct.
directed most of his scripts, at least.
Yeah.
But in terms of screenwriters that have like a recognizable name and style,
Sorkin is number one, in my opinion. I mean, you guys probably will name others in the comment section who are, just as good, if not just as well known as Sorkin. But I feel like he's probably the most well-known one, to be honest.
Right.
So we're going to dive into his filmography, guys. But before we do that, we're going to get into the comment section of last week's episode where we talked about the Oscars, the relevancy of the Oscars, and we also took a bunch of your questions. And let's start out with Mr. I'm going to butcher your name, Gili Bajine, who says, I feel kind of disappointed for the attitude that Ace has towards 3 Billboards just for a trailer. Can I just tell you guys, I got a lot of flack for for my comments on 3 Billboards, which were, I said hyperbole and exaggeration, and I said that I'm kind of joking around, but I guess the 3 Billboards fans just came at me, man.
Yeah,
they came at me for saying that it doesn't look that interesting of a movie, and I get it. I prejudged the movie before watching the movie, but I'm simply expressing my opinion based on what I've seen and based on what's come out in 2017. So, oops.
right.
All the crap I got from 3 Billboards, and I told you, and it's funny because I even put that on my Instagram. I even put that little tag. I don't know if you saw it.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's funny, it's cute. It's like, people are gonna laugh, and it's like, no, man. Then 3 Billboards fans were like, you're gonna talk shit about my movie. Yeah. That's my movie. That's 3 Billboards is my movie. Yeah. So now it's like, yeah, my bad.
Be careful, man. Woody Harrelson's gonna come to your house, knock on your door, be like, yo, what's happening?
Yeah. Sam Rockwell's gonna come in character, and that's gonna be really scary.
Character. Yeah. Again, I still haven't seen 3. We still haven't seen 3 Billboards.
I haven't seen it yet. No,
yeah.
I saw Sorkin's movies. I was going to watch it this week, but then we were doing Sorkin, so I was like, I need to watch Molly's Game.
Yeah.
And our goal was to watch Molly's Game.
Right.
And I did, and you didn't.
Yeah. You watched it.
That was my bad.
Yeah. I missed it, so I can make it, but
yeah. I will watch 3 Billboards, guys, and when I do, I will say something about it. I will make it very well known that I've seen 3 Billboards. Right. I will express my opinions in an appropriate manner and not in a predetermined, prejudged manner.
Right. Go in there with a blank slate, open mind.
That's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
Sasha Lauren says, my dude, Ace and RB3, you guys are the best. I cannot recommend your podcast to enough people. Most film podcasts I watch are panels of older individuals, so it's nice to watch you guys who are much more relatable to someone like myself. Best podcast on the whole damn internet. Damn. Yeah. Thank you, Sasha.
Thank you.
We appreciate that. We do appreciate each and every one of you, even the guys who hate me. That's awesome. Even if you hate me, I'm cool. As long as you're listening, give RB3 a shot. Give me another shot if you want to. If you don't want to, it's cool. But we appreciate you guys. We appreciate the comments. The comments are really what kind of keeps us going, because the views is like whatever. Mm-hmm. But the comments, it's like, well, at least we have some sort of connection with you guys, and we want to establish that connection. So feel free to say whatever you want in the comment section, because we will be reading them.
Right. You gotta say, shout out to the iTunes listeners too, man. Y'all been holding it down.
Yeah, iTunes listeners. Yeah, we definitely appreciate you guys. We see you guys. We see you. So even if you literally are not seeing us right now.
Right.
But we do see you, and we do appreciate you, and we appreciate each and every one of you guys who's been supporting this podcast.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Thank you to Sasha for leaving that awesome comment. Woodsy says, come on, Ace. Watch 3 Billboards. It's nowhere near as boring as a ghost story. Hey, man. Don't throw a ghost story under the bus just because you like 3 Billboards, man. Don't go there, man.
You're attacking Ace right now, man. That's
A
the
ghost
number
story is
2
my
movie.
life, man. It's my
Yeah.
life. It's my purpose.
That's fighting. That's fighting for your number 1. So
No, you can say whatever you want, man. Robert Glasgow says the Academy has too many old people. It does. It's funny because a lot of people remember when they released that whole thing. They're under about the new voters and all that. They're
Right.
under. A lot of people are still under the assumption that the Academy all of a sudden is like now all young people, and it's like no, there's still pretty much vast majority of old people for Academy voters.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any comments on
No,
that.
I mean that's exactly what it is, and I think as time progresses, we're going to see a more inclusive Academy, I guess, over time. But old people are still part of this business. I don't want anybody like get kicked out just because they're old. So.
Terry says, do you think the Oscars should split Best Picture into Best Drama and Best Genre so we can have more options, I guess is what he's saying.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting, but I just worry about the definition of genre and where that end up like falling for some films. I mean, there's some movies that are dramas but with comedic elements, and do you put that in the comedy category because comedy is a genre, or do you put it, or if there's something like a drama, or if there's something that's a drama but it's also a little bit scary. I mean, to me, first thing I think of in that sense is like The Sixth Sense, where really the majority of that movie is a drama, and then with a couple of horror scenes. So I don't know where that would stand in separating categories like that. But I don't know. That's just me personally. What do you think?
I think, I mean, you nailed it on the head. I think it's too much of a dangerous thing to start placing those things. If anything, I feel like what should be happening is the Academy should be acknowledging the genre films as much as they acknowledge the drama films or the indie films. They shouldn't change rules to fit in certain patterns. Instead, they should change minds to see films differently. To acknowledge the Blade Runner 2049 as much as you acknowledge a Three Billboards, or to acknowledge a Call Me By Your Name as much as you acknowledge I don't know, another genre film or a horror film or a quality. There's so many quality genre films nowadays, which was kind of my argument in this whole last week's episode, was the fact that we have so many different genre quality films, superhero films and stuff like that. Instead of, I mean, these genre films are becoming so high elevated A+ cinema, like a Logan, then they should nominate him and recognize him instead of, trying to divide him up and still not give him any recognition. So
yeah, I mean, I think there's always a pattern to like the way the Academy nominates things for Best Picture. Like I think every year, I mean, to me, at least I noticed this, is like there's always one sci-fi movie, always one always one like coming of age film, always one black movie. So it's like every year they kind of.
You think we're gonna have one gay movie every year?
I mean, that's the new thing, right? I mean, kind of thinking about it, I mean, really since, what was it, A Single Man, was that in 2010, and then, I don't know what happened in 2011, but then, they have Moonlight, now Call Me By Your Name, so, I mean, I don't know, maybe, I mean, but...
Brokeback Mountain, right?
Brokeback Mountain, yeah, back in, like, 05.
Back in the day,
yeah. So, I mean, there are movies that definitely explore, homosexuality that get nominated for Best Picture, but I don't know if they nominate them just because they're necessarily that subject matter.
I still haven't seen Call Me By Your Name. I have no judgment towards the movie. I just haven't seen it.
Right. No, but I think that's a great film, and I think it deserves to be nominated. But
yeah,
I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe that is one of the quotas there, because again, like you look at the patterns from year to year. I mean, honestly, particularly with this, sci-fi is really the only genre they're willing to recognize in the Best Picture category. Like 2009 Avatar, 2010 Inception. You look at stuff like Gravity.
That's
like
true.
all the pretty much every year there's another sci-fi film that gets in. This year, Shape of Water. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I kind of I don't know.
Last week, I have a question for you, Ep19, just because you're very opinionated about this, and I know you have an opinion about this certain thing. Last week, I read a lot of articles, and I had a lot of conversations with people who were watching Shape of Water for the first time, and a lot of their arguments and a lot of the articles were talking about how the Academy did something so different by nominating the most different film ever, which is Shape of Water. And it's just so weird and so out there that it's crazy that it got so many nominations. And to that, you would say,
come on, man. It's not that different. Like, again, like I keep harping
because
on
I
this.
read so many articles that were like, look at how weird Shape of Water is and how many nominations it got. The Academy is changing, and it's like, what would you say to that?
No, it's not. Like, it's the same. Listen, it's like, it's a formula. Like, you could literally have any movie,
Yeah.
as long as there's a scene that turns like black and white or silent, or just pays some sort of homage to like movies, I guess, in general, or cinema, old school stuff. Then it's gonna get nominated for Best Picture. People are gonna love it,
Even if it's a fish.
even if it's a
sex
fish love story.
film.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't. And then even I mean, I'm not. Listen, I love Shape of Water. It was in my top 10. Like,
Yeah,
I love
and it
the
wasn't
movie.
in my top 10, so
Yeah,
there you go.
but even besides that, like, it's not necessarily the most like groundbreaking movie on a story level. Like, it's pretty much kind of a paint by numbers monster, like monster like movie, but the kind of stuff where it's like E.T. or like in that vein.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's not that different, and the style is nice, but then it's also, and then it goes back to another thing that it also recognizes, to a certain extent, there's moments in there that recognize like some social relevancy, whether it comes to, I mean, there, at points it addresses like discrimination and all that stuff. Again, another thing the Academy loves. So to me, it's not really that different. There's really not any movies in this year, I guess, on a fundamental level that are that different, that got nominated for Best Picture, except I think
I do feel like Get Out is a little bit.
Well, Get Out's different. Yes,
If you
Get Out's
told
different.
anyone
Yeah.
coming out of that movie in February if that was going to be an Oscar-nominated film, they would all would have laughed at you. They laughed at me when I said it back in July.
Yeah.
I said it on the Schmoes No Show back in summer. I was like, it's going to get nominated for... Really? What? That's insane. And I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty confident it will be.
Yeah.
And now it is. I mean,
Yeah,
but you're
yeah.
right. It's still not as super groundbreaking. It is pretty groundbreaking, but you're right.
Yeah.
It still has something that you can allow it to get an Oscar nomination.
Now, what I will say, though, I think in terms of story, they're not really that different. In terms of styles, though, I think we get a variety of styles that are really nice. Like,
Sure.
Dunkirk is just another war movie. Again, that's another kind of check you could quota
Sure.
for a Best Picture nomination. But it's done differently in terms of editing, in terms of the way it sequences time and events.
Sure.
Different execution. Shape of Water, not really the most different movie in terms of subject material and the way it handles like all that stuff, but the style is very Guillermo del Toro-ish.
But you did feel, though, that it did pander to Oscar
It's
voters.
pandering to, I mean,
And
yeah.
I told my friends that when they were arguing about it, because they were like, "Oh, it's so crazy and different," and I'm like, "My buddy RB3 thinks it's pandering to Oscar voters."
Exactly.
What do you say to that?
And listen, it's not like I've like never said. I remember walking out of the movie.
I walked out with you.
The
yeah.
first thing I said was, "Man, they're really going hard for that Oscar."
Yeah.
Like, so I don't know.
It worked.
It worked. And to me, Pan's Labyrinth is the best Guillermo del Toro movie,
Yeah.
and doesn't receive any recognition. Well, it did receive recognition,
It
but
did.
it's not like on the same level that Shape of Water is. So
Yeah.
that's just kind of how I feel about it.
Cool. Let's move on to this week's episode, which is all about Mr. Aaron Sorkin. And before we do, I want to ask you a question, RB3.
Yes, sir.
I want to talk about, since we are talking about a screenwriter, I think it's important to differentiate the two. And I want to talk about Sorkin, the man, and what he's known for in Hollywood. And I want to say, how would you respond if I asked you, what makes a Sorkin script a Sorkin script? What is the defining qualities of a Sorkin script?
Well, I think it's definitely the dialogue, right? The dialogue is where he's most known. I think that's what differentiates him from any other screenwriter. I believe there's a quote where he refers to dialogue as music, and he thinks of dialogue as it could go in rhythms, and it could change tempos and reflect the tempo of the scene that's being portrayed. And I think that's really where Sorkin's style lies the heaviest. But I also think it's also the sense of not necessarily linear storytelling, but non-conventional storytelling too. Obviously, when you look at some of his earlier works, like A Few Good Men and Charlie Wilson's War, it's a little more straightforward. But there's films like The Social Network and Steve Jobs that really break the traditional structure of cinema and weaves and incorporates things to highlight the writing. So I think that's where he's best known for. What about yourself, though, Ace?
No, I feel like Sorkin, it's crazy because Sorkin has become so much of a, in between screenwriters and writers, because I work with a lot of writers, and I work with a specific guy who like admires Sorkin, and he's like a Sorkinite. I don't know what you would call the Sorkin fans, but he's like a very hyper Sorkin fan who like kind of not mimics but sees that as like an inspiration of his own writing, and he likes those beats and those super quick, super fast dialogue, super smart dialogue. Moves the story along at a really quick pace. It's like you said, it's a lot about pacing, right?
Right.
But it's also like it really has to do with quality, right? Because it's something it's a word that's so like difficult to find in art is quality, especially with something like writing. When you can see some quality on a visual scale, it's different. But when you see it in a writing scale, it has to pop out a lot more. And no script pops more than Sorkin's script because it's the most poppiest thing that you can imagine. It almost comes at you out of the screen, especially like in a movie like a Steve Jobs, right? That one just comes at you. It's very much telling you that the backbone of this entire film is Michael Fassbender's performance and Aaron Sorkin's script. I mean, Danny Boyle is great, but that is essentially what holds the film together. So it's crazy, but he is known for that kind of quality, smart, make the audience catch up to what you're trying to do, and teach them along the way, but still have a higher standard for understanding, if that makes any sense.
Right.
Like don't basically assume the audience is smart enough to keep up with you. Don't assume they're dumb.
Right.
That kind of whole concept of a script where the major Hollywood blockbuster films purposely dumb down material because they want to make it more bigger for international audiences and for bigger audiences in general. Yeah. But when you have a script like a Sorkin script, it's like, I don't think you can translate that to like a Chinese. I mean, you can, but it's just too much for like a Chinese audience or something.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of what Sorkin is known for, is taking the material and elevating it to meet the standards of his standards and telling everyone else to catch up. I think that's kind of what, I mean, I might be wrong, but I think that's kind of what he's known for.
No, I think that's exactly what he goes for, and I think that definitely comes from the fact that he started off as a playwright. In theater, you have to rely so much on your audience and being imaginative and visualizing what's happening on stage, because, frankly, the stage is just the performances and minor set dressings. So you have to. So the audience is reliant on creating the world and the atmosphere and all that. Of course, the actors and the material and the lighting and everything helps that. But that responsibility is put on the audience. And I think that's the same thing Sorkin expects from a film audience. And I think especially when we start talking about A Few Good Men, which is his debut feature, which is based on a play that he wrote himself, you could clearly tell that he doesn't really have much of an interest in the traditional narrative beats and structures of a traditional screenplay, and is more focused on the writing and execution of such. So
yeah, but before we move on, because it is his first official credit as a screenwriter, I want to add to that comment and say that I'd rather see a movie that forces me to watch it twice than to watch a movie once and just be kind of let down by it, if that makes any sense.
Right.
Like if I struggle to keep up with the movie because of the heavy dialogue and the very intellectual dialogue, I'd rather go back and rewatch the movie a few times than to just watch a movie with dumbed down dialogue and dumbed down intellectual aspects and just be kind of disappointed by it, if that makes any sense.
No, I totally get what you're saying, and I'm not gonna lie, there's one movie that to me always stood out as something that really dumbed it down. It has nothing to do with Sorkin, but I don't know. In 2015, when The Martian came out with Matt Damon,
that's right.
To me,
you don't like that script, really?
I like the movie, and I like but I read the book before, and the book is very smart, and the book is very high level science and shit like that. So then, like, when in the movie they kind of really like pare it down to like the bare essentials.
Dude, you got it. I saw The Martian with my buddy who's also read the book.
Yeah.
Oh my god. After a while, I got annoyed. He's like, dude, the book and this and all. I'm like, bro, I get it. The book is better. It's a movie. They had to, bro.
No, I don't like comparing books and movies, but That
In
to
this
me,
case, I feel like everyone who read that book was just like, "Oh, the book is like, bro. I mean, the movie was whack, bro." I mean, I'm like, dude, we get it. You're smarter than me, man. Like, come on, just enjoy it. I love Ridley Scott, so I'm always gonna defend Ridley Scott. No, I'm kidding. But I do feel like I don't know, man. I if you ask if you ask regular scientists, they like that movie because it did have some actual scientific facts based on it.
no, yeah, no, I don't. No, I'm not hating on the movie. I think it's a decent film.
Yeah.
I even saw it twice when it came out in theaters
Yeah.
because I enjoyed it. But to me, it was very clear. Like the book is very like the whole thing when he's like planting the potatoes in the ground, like that's a very small aspect in the book and in the movie. In the book, that's like an entire chapter explaining like the exact chemical reactions and like all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So to me, that was what interested me, and I thought going into the movie, and I can only imagine if like Sorkin would have been writing, he would have like went super ham on like
That's a good point.
the interesting stuff.
But funny enough, the reason why Ridley Scott signed on was because of that script, Drew Goddard's script, which was like a very popular script that went around Hollywood. Because I know that they were trying to make that movie for such a long time, and Drew Goddard wrote that script, and everyone was like, "Oh, it's crazy, you got to do it." And they took it to Ridley, and Ridley was like, "Yeah, that's dope. I'll do that, and I'll make it my movie." So
yeah.
But basically, my point was I like watching Sorkin films, and I like rewatching them because you can catch certain things, and that's why I like films that force me to keep up than films that kind of hold my hand. It's like, we get it. You don't have to hold my hand. I can keep up, or I can try to keep up.
Right.
I'd rather be forced to focus in a movie, and that's what he's known for the most. And with that, we go to his first 3 films, which all came out in the early '90s. And that obviously is A Few Good Men, Malice, and The American President. He has certain themes, and I want to talk about it because that's kind of the whole purpose of our podcast, is talking about themes. But you can tell already with those first 3 movies, he has certain themes that he keeps bringing up. But first of all, obviously, A Few Good Men is like you just said, it started out as a play that he wrote, and it became, I mean, it's still one of the most legendary, iconic American films. It really is like a really, really, really famous movie that almost everyone has seen or almost everyone knows lines from.
Right.
Which
definitely most quotable.
Yeah. And that comes from, Sorkin himself. So that's already like, talk about making your debut something that's like right off the bat legendary. That's A Few Good Men. What are your thoughts on the script and how it pops off on the screen?
Well, no, I think it's legendary, and I think it's, like I said, it's based on the original play that was performed on Broadway and published. And what's interesting, before Sorkin, after the film rights were sold to it, and the studio commissioned him to write the screenplay. Before that, he never even wrote a screenplay before, and he never read a screenplay before. So he had no idea what the actual format and structure of a screenplay is supposed to reflect, was supposed to be. So he ended up buying a book from William Goodman, who wrote things like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and The Princess Bride. And basically, he used that book as a template to help write the screenplay. I think eventually, at some point, even Goodman came on and did some unaccredited rewrites on A Few Good Men too. So much so that Aaron Sorkin liked it so much that he took those elements that were rewritten and put them back into the original play. So I think that's fascinating. But yeah, on the script level, I think, like you said, it's very iconic, it's very quotable. You can't handle the truth. Like, there's a lot of great moments of just quippiness between everybody, whether that's Tom Cruise, Kevin Bacon, Demi Moore, Jack Nicholson, of course. Just the entire ensemble cast has something that they're trying to get across, and I think that's what's great, is that each person has their kind of own personality and their own agenda. So I think it makes for a very complex screenplay.
Yeah, what do you think as far as how he, I mean, especially I want to, stay on this topic a little bit more since it's his first one, how he kind of develops characters, specifically with the Tom Cruise, Demi Moore, and Jack Nicholson character. How do you, what do you feel like he does to really, because that's one of the most important things in a script is to introduce the protagonist and show who he is without making it too much. You know what I'm saying? Because it's always difficult to introduce a character and to get people on board with that character, or to introduce a character and to kind of develop certain characteristics of that character so that the audience can know whether to root for or against that character.
Right. No, I think he puts a lot of attention, particularly into Cruz's character, because he is kind of on some level showing some level of excitement for having this position, like this new position, and I don't know, is it naval or is it military?
I think it's Marine.
Marine. Okay, yeah, Marine position, and then but meanwhile, you have somebody like Demi Moore who feels like she deserves the shot to go after and try and prosecute, Nicholson's character, and her character arc. She doesn't really have an arc in this movie, but she's more reflective of like the stagnant kind of, the stagnant position that a lot of women in the military are kind of put in. Like, she has to act tough, she has to act overly masculine, and in doing that, it comes off as kind of sterile on one note, but she's actually bringing a lot of layers to it, particularly when she basically almost becomes like romantically involved with Cruz's character. So I think there's a lot, and of course Nicholson is just Jack Nicholson. He could play anger at pretty much almost every level, and I think it works to an efficient sustain. So
Yeah, didn't he have a movie with Adam Sandler?
Yeah, anger management. Yeah.
Is that Jack Nicholson?
Yeah, it's Nicholson. I love
this
that
guy's
movie.
known for his anger.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think the movie has to say about tradition, especially with something like the U.S. military, which is, buried and bathed in tradition? Like everything is so tradition. No change, and especially when something like, a situation like this, delicate and this crazy happens in the military. Right. What the script, or even if it's a subtle indication of what they're trying to say about Jack Nicholson's character kind of representing that, and then Tom Cruise's character and Demi Moore kind of representing something different and something new inside a very traditional organization.
Yeah, no, I think it definitely speaks to how a lot of times when we think the idea of tradition can be broken, and how tradition is pretty much could be just as harmful as anything else. I mean, the whole film is about a Marine officer who like gets like beat like damn near to death because like he's being hazed or whatever, hazing. Yeah. By the way, if you're wondering why I'm wearing this beret, I just recently became a pledge for the Delta Kappa Alpha organization at USC. So, it's the Cinematic Arts Professional Fraternity. Luckily, we didn't have to go through any hazing. No hazing. It was more rushing. We did some interesting stuff there. And I can't break down the traditions of what we do because that's against, policy. Yeah. But yeah, that's why I'm wearing the beret. Beret is the tradition we have to wear first week while pledging. So
you have a first-hand hazing stories to tell.
Yeah. Stories I cannot tell.
Even though you just said there was no hazing.
Yeah, no hazing. And no stories to tell in this podcast. By the way, I know some of the fellow DKA members listen to the show. Nice. So shout out to y'all.
Hey, shout out to you guys. Thank you for listening.
But yeah, no, definitely. A Few Good Men. It's definitely about how toxic some of the ideas of tradition and hazing could be, and how defending some of this toxicity can boil up and create this distrust, this anger amongst fellow comrades. And I think that's really where the film's trying to hammer it home at. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's really, Demi Moore too is funny because she was, back in this day, she was big, dude. She was pretty well known.
Oh yeah, was this and like Striptease came out like 93 or something like that. And it's funny, the placement of this movie or it came out in 1992. Back in like the 80s, our kind of interpretation of the military and Marines were, at least on the movies front, was pretty optimistic, right? I mean, Cruise's last big military movie before this was Top Gun, which is a celebration of the military, and not even to go into other war films that are coming out during that time. Platoon, of course. A lot of movies were in the 80s were very pro-America, pro-military, Rambo, but Rambo might not be a good example because it's more about
Predator.
PTSD. I guess. Yeah.
Great military movie, Predator.
But it's very much like pro-America. It's very much like a pro-America attitude. So coming out in 1992 is kind of like the post, like looking back on that era of war films, and kind of reflecting on that a little bit of a hesitation. And I think particularly in casting somebody like Cruise, who's, like I said, his last thing was Top Gun, where he's in a position where he has to question the power that are be in this government like institution, and how you have to kind of hide everything, within under the veil of tradition. So
Sure.
It's definitely interesting.
You're saying too, like the audience association of having a Tom Cruise on screen, they kind of associate that as like, oh yeah, the guy from Top Gun.
Mm-hmm.
They go watch this movie and they get a different perspective on the military.
Right, exactly. And I think, in particular looking at somebody like Tom Cruise's filmography, you can see how the public's perception of military kind of changes throughout his entire career. You can look at something like Top Gun, this is his first big role, and then look at like Edge of Tomorrow, where he's like actively, it's a sci-fi movie, of course, but the idea of military, he's actively avoiding the fight, whereas Top Gun is like, get in the fight. And this movie is like, a little hesitant about that,
Yeah.
So as time progresses and I guess audiences start to have a little more of an understanding of what is uncovered behind the veil of what the institution allows us to understand.
Sure.
And I think that's where a lot of trust comes. And I think this movie has a hand in that as well. So
Yeah, I mean, it's actually a very delicate subject, to say the least, because it's not like you don't, offending people and offending organizations isn't important. It's not about that. It's about the representation of what the U.S. military means to the United States in general, and what it means to like American patriotism is something that is at such a high level, it's almost godlike, right? Where you can't say anything blasphemous against the military because you feel like you're saying something blasphemous against the men and women who've served this country and who've died for this country. Look at,
Colin Kaepernick.
Exactly my point. Look at the take a knee thing for the NFL that's been going on, right? Where it was very clearly stated that wasn't the intention at all, and that has nothing to do with the national anthem, and yet that was the offense taken because it's somehow offending the military, and now there's this big hubbub about it, and it's this thing that even freaking the president of the United States called out, and it becomes something that's so delicate because you can't offend the people who've died for the country, and that's never what that was initially going to become. But it's crazy how it's still that sacred tradition, right?
No, I think without a doubt, and I think that's exactly what they're trying to communicate in this movie, right? Is the how our expectations for our authority and our power, how that kind of differs from the reality a little bit. And particularly in the case of something like the NFL and going back to like Colin Kaepernick and all that stuff, the ideas behind some of our patriotism overshadows what's actually being said in a lot of cases, right? It's just funny because like when Kaepernick first took the knee, he wasn't even like protesting military, or he wasn't he was doing it for like police brutality, but then people take the symbol of the American flag and the symbols of national anthem and use that to reflect their own beliefs and their own, based on what we've been told and what's been established. That is just, people see it as disrespectful. I think even to the point of A Few Good Men, you can even see it on the poster, right? The poster has the American flag right there at the bottom of it. The movie starts off with the opening credits are literally marching of, the standard tradition we see of a lot of military movies. So it's like, again, that's what we see, and what we see is reflected through military and through the establishment institution and how we interpolate those traditions.
I think too, something that has to be said as well is that, and this is just a personal take now, it's less relevant about the movie, but it has something to say based on the movie, is that things about, we live in a time now when organizations have become bigger than their ideals themselves, right? Mm-hmm. Look at a movie like Spotlight, where it talks about the Catholic Church and how the Catholic Church was so afraid that this kind of stuff was going to get out and kind of, say something negative against the Catholic Church and put the Catholic Church in bad light, that they kept it closed, kept it within themselves, and kept it within their own quarters, and kind of swept it under the rug, and they allowed people who were dangerous, evil people to continue this abusive behavior, to continue this evil behavior, instead of allowing everything to blow over and clean house, right? And it's crazy how certain organizations like the military, like the Catholic Church, show a fear instead of realizing that if we do represent these ideals of Catholicism, then we should be the ones who want to clean house and to want to get rid of everything that is against the tradition of God. Same with the military. We should want to get rid of these people who do these types of things that is shown in A Few Good Men. We should want to get rid of that. And this is something that is so important to say, because it's something that we're facing right now with the Larry Nassar thing with the U.S. gymnastics.
Oh, right.
They just kept, sweeping this thing under the rug. And this is 2018, man. This ain't 1992. And it's like we're letting evil, be bigger than our organization because we're so afraid it's going to look bad, instead of just trying to get rid of everything that's a bad representation of what you initially stood for. The U.S. military stands for, good things. The Catholic Church, stands for good things. All these people want to stand for good things. U.S. Gymnastics stands for good things. All these organizations want to stand for good things, and yet they cover up and cover up and cover up and make it worse and allow abusive, evil behavior to go unpunished.
Right.
And kind of, basically allowing years and years of rampant abusive behavior to go unnoticed and unpunished and unspoken.
Right. No, I think that's definitely the biggest problem with like these giant organizations, protecting their ideals and their image and all that stuff.
And they're making it worse.
Yeah, and they're just continuing to perpetuate these toxic like ideas. I think that's even a deeper thing that we're going to go into when we talk about Charlie Wilson's War. But in terms of this movie, and the whole U.S. gymnastics things is so relevant because especially now in this like age of power and abuse, and how the abuse of power goes unnoticed and unscathed. And I think that's what A Few Good Men addresses thematically. But luckily that Larry Nassar guy, he's like locked up for the rest of his rest of his life.
I've been keeping up because I love sports and I love sports talk and all that stuff. And I've been keeping up with a lot of different podcasters that talk about sports. And to be honest, man, that's great. That really is great.
Yeah.
But it goes down a line of a guy who covered him up here, and then his superior who covered him up there, and it goes on and on and on. And that's great that the abuser got whatever, life in prison. But let's start cutting down those people that let it happen. Let's start going back to use gymnastics and clean house. Let's go back to Michigan State University and start cleaning house. Anyone who has any association with that, to really relay the fact that you have the responsibility. If knowledge is told to you, you have that responsibility if you have any position of power whatsoever. It's not just the abuser, it's the people who allow those abusers to continue their abuse.
What do you think? We're going to see a lot of like cleaning house in Hollywood in particular now with this whole Me Too movement. A lot of
that's
people
what we were seeing and towards the end of 2017. What my fear is that's going to die down. And it's already kind of, it's not dying down, but it is kind of already taking a step back, right? And it's kind of, people are afraid of muddying the waters, I guess, of calling out the correct types of people or degrees of severity of crimes, right? Severity of abuses of power kind of thing. Right. But I do fear that it's going to die down. Eventually it will die down. And some people... especially this last few days, man, I find it crazy. And I know this is going a little bit off topic here, and I acknowledge that, but I really do feel like it's crazy how, since you brought it up, I'm blaming you now. RB3 brought it up.
Wait a minute.
But I do feel like we're in a world now where people are smart, man. Right now we're having people who are ducking and covering and just disappearing, and they're gonna pop out a year, 2 years, 3 years from now with a new movie or a new whatever, and all of a sudden it's gonna be forgotten because this Time's Up movement is a movement that hopefully doesn't have a temporary status, but it might have a temporary status because man, that Casey Affleck news killed me.
No,
It killed me.
What that
He's not presented at the Oscars because he knows that it's like, dude, I'm not gonna show my face for 2 years, homie, and then I'm good. It's like, really, like that's what's gonna happen now. We're okay with Casey Affleck because we don't see Casey Affleck, right? And what happened last year when he was doing the stuff he did and he was accused of all that stuff, and I'm pretty confident it was true. It's like, we're going to forget about it because 2 years from now, Casey Affleck is going to come out with another great movie, but he's going to disappear. Another homie, too, that is, dodging a lot of bullets. And I'm not trying to call out anyone, but I am saying that this whole Weinstein thing, a lot of people associated to Weinstein went untouched, man.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Like, when I know the big names, the big people who are behind it are getting called out and being exiled, but like the associates that put up, there's stories of Weinstein's assistants actually like setting up the hotel rooms and like leading the actresses that way. Do you think those people should
That's what I'm saying. All they have to do is disappear for a little bit. They come back and they're fine. And I think that's not how it should be. It should be something that as soon as you pop back up, be like, no, that's Casey Affleck's back. Get him. It's like as soon as he pops back up.
To be fair, though, back when Casey Affleck's thing happened, it was just Casey Affleck.
No, but that's what I'm saying.
Now it's like all of Hollywood. So,
but all of Hollywood that we know of. Though.
Yeah,
I'm saying that this is something that I don't know. To me, it's like it shouldn't just be people who are abusing other people. It should be the people who know about it. Let's get rid of those people too. I'm just saying, like, anyone who allowed evil behavior to continue and they knew about it, let's stop it.
Yeah.
Let's stop it and let's move on. All right. His next two films are Malice and The American President.
Transparency here. I didn't see Malice.
Oh,
so,
all the Malice fans are going crazy in the comment section.
Malice
RB3,
fans.
How can you say shit about Malice, bro?
Getting shot. This is like Denzel at the end of Training Day. But yeah, no, So I didn't see Malice. I did watch The American President.
There you go.
Though.
What are your thoughts on that one?
That was good. It's like a nice little romantic comedy kind of set in the behind the scenes of like the White House. And funny enough, this is a movie that was like not really the inspiration, but kind of loosely what inspired Sorkin to do the West Wing. The West Wing. It's set in the White House, and they even used the production. I think they had. In the production of this movie, like Bill Clinton was president at the time, so he allowed the production designer, director Rob Reiner. This is Sorkin's second collaboration with Rob Reiner after A Few Good Men. So they let Rob Reiner take a tour of the White House, get kind of a bunch of ideas for it, and I think even ideas that were cut from this movie were ultimately implemented into the West Wing. But that being said, I mean, this is a nice like romantic comedy, I believe. Who exactly is in it? I can't think off the top of my head.
It's Michael Douglas, Martin Sheen.
Martin Sheen, The West Wing, exactly. So, but yeah, and that betting, Douglas plays like the president whose wife has been is no longer with him. So then he starts to fall in love with and that betting character who's like an environmental lobbyist. So it's a nice little story. It's not really like that complex in terms of like political intrigue, but I think it does have something to say about how how lobbyists in general have such a big influence on politics. So
that's good. RB3, man, you catching things, bro. Nothing goes over your head, dude.
Hey, man, that's all lobbyists is, man. They're just seducing presidents, man. Yeah. To watch out.
Literally.
You have to watch out for those sneaky lobbyists.
They ain't loyal, bro. Them lobbyists ain't loyal.
Lobbyists ain't loyal. But I enjoy this movie quite a bit. I think it was nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Comedy. The year it came out, Best Director as well. So
I just keep imagining like those memes that say "thoughts be like." It's like girls shaking their ass or like doing dances. It's like lobbyists be like, "Hey, what's over there?" And they're like bending down.
That's good.
Good. Man, and the presidents be like, "Oh damn," them thoughts, bro.
Yeah, no, I think especially in the presidency that we're living in now, lobbyists definitely have a piece to play,
and that's actually important. I like getting little sub things under movies. Like when a movie is about one thing, but you can get something else out of it. Mm-hmm. That's good, man.
Yeah,
I see you, bro. Rocking that
beret. Baby.
Yeah, rocking that beret, man.
That's what it's about.
That's what it's about. Let's move on to his next film, which is Charlie Wilson's War. Now you just saw this one, right?
Yeah.
What do you think about this one? And what I mean, again, here we go again with the Sorkin themes, right? There's a certain theme that so far he's hitting.
Right.
Do you know what it is, RB3?
Very war-oriented,
political, U.S. traditional kind of stuff.
Yeah, how we're breaking that. And you know, it's funny too. I think I believe there's a quote where Sorkin talks about he likes to tell stories about the behind the scenes of what we normally glamorize.
That's cool, because that plays into something else that I want to say later on. But
no, and I think that's exactly what I mean. You talk about the American president, the behind the scenes of the White House, and and we're not talking about the West Wing really, because I haven't really watched that show, and we don't talk about TV on the show that much. But the West Wing, to him, there's that famous quote where he says, "The West Wing is everything 5 minutes before a CNN announcement and 5 minutes after." So I think that's where he kind of highlights, and same thing with the newsroom, behind the scenes of journalism too. So, and this one is the behind the scenes of war profiteering, essentially, right? Starts off, it's about a U.S. senator played by Tom Hanks, who's representative of the 2nd District of Texas, and he basically, because of his affection to the woman played by Julia Roberts, who's the richest woman in Texas, basically gets involved in this large war profiteering happening in Afghanistan. And it's not just because of her. He also takes a tour of what's happening this takes place in 1980. I want to say 1980s. It's 1980s for sure. I don't know if it's exactly 1980, but the end of the film is 1989. But yeah, it takes place during that time where it was the Cold War with the Russians versus the U.S., and then how that played into the geopolitics of Afghanistan and Israel and Pakistan. So like, long story short, is basically like Tom Hanks, like trying to get funding and funding this war, funding a whole U.S. intervention into this conflict in Afghanistan and Russia, which really they had no place in before, and how that just expands and keeps expanding and stacking on top of each other, on top of each other, on top of each other, where it reaches a point of like unbelievability. So that's really where, to me, this is not the greatest film, but it touches on a lot of really sensitive politics that we're still seeing the consequences implemented today. So,
which is real, man.
That
stuff is real. It's
yeah.
crazy. Do you feel like it has like a very, like off the bat, do they have a very clear political message that they want to say?
I think that's where the film gets a little muddled. I think the whole point of it is to humanize what Hanks's character is going through. But that being said, I mean, again, this is how I read politics. I disagree with everything that's happening in this movie, essentially, and it's real. It's a real story. So this is essentially how one senator basically influenced the entire outcome of not the entire outcome, but the entire intervention of the U.S. and the rest of the situation, eventually leading to the U.S. becoming involved in other big conflicts around Afghanistan, including Pakistan, including the relationship with Israel, and then including all of these like big war, big foreign policy.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, including mistakes we made that are cost us and later on in the long run.
And again, this is I think this movie kind of highlights how the stakes are going to keep upping themselves the more we get involved in more foreign conflicts. And I mean, essentially is where we are now. I mean, the U.S. is bombing 8 different countries at the moment. 8 different countries. I don't get how we get in this spot, but it's
sometimes those countries need bombing, bro.
I don't know. So it's just it's like we're toppling more and more wars on top of each other. But I think this movie does a good job of acknowledging how kind of not risque, but how overblown this whole conflict is, right? In the beginning, they say, the original budget we're going to put to backing Afghan soldiers against their defense of Russia is $5 million. And, in the beginning of the movie, he gets a call, like, they just upped it to $10 million. But because he goes in and does a lot of politics and managed to navigate through a lot of people and expanding the war. By the end of the movie, the budget's $1 billion.
Yeah.
Right, the budget for funding the Afghani forces, and then he asked for, hey, maybe we should put in another million just to help fund the school, and they're like, fund a school? What are you talking about? $1 million? Really? You just got $1 billion? Like, no, you're funding the wrong things, motherfuckers. Like, come on. Like, so again, that's how foreign policy essentially works. Though we're gonna spend money, we're gonna keep funding the military industrial complex, because that's essentially what pays for the bills in this country. And yeah, it's just. But yeah, I think that's definitely where this movie's going for. But I think there's a lot of interesting cast members in this movie. Of course, Julia Roberts plays the I guess a love interest, so to speak. But then there's also Amy Adams, who's Tom Hanks' assistant. Philip Seymour Hoffman plays like a great part where he comes in as kind of like the covert operator who is assisting in this stuff, but then at a certain point too, he realizes we've gone too far and is kind of asking. I mean, there's a great quote near the end of the movie where he says we talked about the Zen master and how how there's this whole story of a kid rides a bicycle and the whole town says, oh, how terrific, and then he says, we'll see, and then the kid breaks his leg, and then everybody in the town's like, oh, that's terrible. And then the Zen master's like, we'll see. And then but then the country goes to war, but the kid can't fight because he has a broke leg. And everybody in the town's like, that's terrific. And then the Zen master says, we'll see. And that's the story Philip Seymour Hoffman character tells in this movie. And I think that really highlights the exact theme of this movie, right? The more we intervene in a question that doesn't have an answer to it yet, the more we're just gonna keep going, like, we'll see. Things are gonna keep escalating, getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah. So. I have a question for you, just because you saw. It's a completely different film, and I know it is. But yeah. What do you think? Do you think it has anything like War Machine did? Because I know I talked to my buddy about War Machine, and I know you saw it too. Because not a lot of people have seen that movie. It's a Netflix movie with Brad Pitt, and I liked the movie. But my buddy argued kind of something similar to you when he said, it's not really. It's telling you to follow along with a character who's doing things that you're not necessarily super on board with, but at the same time you feel so much sympathy for the character that at a moment you're like, wait a minute, what is this movie trying to tell me? Yeah. Do you feel like that's a similarity with Charlie Wilson's War?
I think so, and I think it humanizes a certain perspective that really shouldn't be. I mean, humanized.
That's what my buddy said about War Machine.
Yeah,
I disagree with him, because I was like, I mean, you get a different perspective, and I think it's important to get a different perspective.
Right.
But that's just me.
Right. No, I mean, there's something valid to that, I think, too, though. I mean, nothing wrong with having. I think it's good to actually have another perspective and how.
Even if it's the wrong perspective?
Yeah, even if we disagree, I guess it's a good thing. I can't really vibe with that personally.
All right.
And I know that's a lot of people's argument. I mean, going back to the Three Billboards discussion, that's a lot of people's argument for Three Billboards, in particular with Sam Rockwell. Again, I haven't seen it, so I don't know.
If you haven't seen it, RB3, you best shut your mouth.
Yeah. No, I should see it, and I'm going to see it. And I'm going to go on with a complete blank slate when I see it. But that being said, I know a lot of the criticism for Three Billboards is that it humanizes racism, essentially.
Okay.
And, so I don't know how that's going to play out in that movie. But in this movie, you kind of see the size of Tom Hanks, his character, Charlie Wilson, as being a good guy. He's just in his mind, he's doing the right thing, and the way it's framed in the movie, he is kind of doing the right thing. He's intervening in a situation where a lot of people are getting killed in Afghanistan, a lot of people are getting hurt, and a lot of people need some U.S. support.
Sure.
But is actually arming people and fighting a war, and and a lot of times you're arming the bad guys in the same vein. Yeah. You're arming the people. I mean, there's even in today's politics, we're arming the people who are fighting our soldiers, essentially, too. Sure. So it's a real complicated thing that has to be dealt with, and and the political system. But I think that's what Sorkin addresses directly here. So
Cool, man. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Let's move on to your favorite movie, which is The Social Network.
Social Network, yes, it's legit one of my favorite movies.
I don't
yeah.
think I've ever heard you talk about this movie. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I was gonna say
You just rant about this movie all the time.
Yeah,
dude.
yeah. Every podcast we must.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about this.
We
in the Fincher
did, yeah.
episode,
What do you
so-
think about? Let's talk about the script then. Let's talk
script,
about
yeah.
specifically what Sorkin does with this versus what what's his freaking name? We just did a whole podcast on him. The
Fincher?
director Fincher.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
Fincher? What Sorkin does with it,
Mm-hmm.
and then what Fincher takes and makes it into film.
Right. No, I think a lot of what Sorkin's dialogue is very repetitive. He has a very repetitive style.
This is very Sorkin dialogue too, which the super quick, super smart,
super witty,
super little jokes here and there, and like,
Right.
talk and fast and weird moments, and that's it fits the Sorkin theme and the Sorkin isms
Right.
that kind of come up in every single one of his scripts, and this one does it to a T, right?
Right. And I think that's what's brilliant about it. I think the fact that it lands a lot of those big moments. I mean, the whole opening sequence where Mark Zuckerberg is talking to
Rooney Mara.
Rooney Mara, yeah.
Shout out to Rooney Mara, my girl Rooney Mara.
Yeah. And a ghost story.
A ghost
There you
story,
go.
Rooney
Hey.
Mara.
Yeah, but the whole thing on paper is like, I think it was like 10 pages long. So it goes by super quick because it's just snappy. And I think that's also a thing to talk about Sorkin too, is the fact that with Sorkin in particular, his background, he wanted to be an actor, and he started out studying in college to be a stage actor, and he lived in New York to be a stage actor. So he obviously has a fixation with dialogue, and I think with dialogue being at the forefront of this movie kind of highlights each character. And I think the way each character's dialogue is written also inflects what we understand about each character.
And
right?
how you feel about each
How you
character.
feel about each character.
What do you feel like he's trying to say? Because based on this movie, you go in and you're basically your protagonist is a Mark Zuckerberg, but you leave the movie going, I don't know if I like that guy.
yeah. It was very questionable, right?
Yeah.
He highlights a lot of the flaws and a lot of the idiosyms
To the
that
point that you feel like he's almost a villain of his own movie.
of his own movie. Yeah, essentially, because he screws over his best friends.
Yeah.
He has no real empathy for the people who he's like negatively affecting in his circle. So it's a lot. It's particularly in telling the story. And again, this might not be the most accurate portrayal of Mark Zuckerberg.
It's not.
Yeah.
No.
And I guess even Sorkin will go on to admit that
Sure.
as well. But what it does serve as a reflection of kind of the idea of a self-centered genius and how his own beliefs and I don't know what's the right word for it. I guess
Ideals, I guess.
yeah, ideals influence how they don't have, or how they may or may not have an outlook on reality, how their disconnection to reality actually feels, and how it actually matriculates into their interactions with people.
Sure.
So again, I think that's what lands really well for Jesse Eisenberg, who plays Mark Zuckerberg in this film.
Yeah.
I think with all the characters, Andrew Garfield has his own perspective. And I think that's, it's easy for writers to kind of write from the same voice and have all the characters talk the exact same. But, and I guess it's partially because of I guess it's a lot to do with the actors and a lot to do with the directing as well. But each of these characters feel different, Each of these characters feel like they're coming from a different place and
Sure.
different standpoint. So...
And it's crazy because the script kind of tells you how to feel about certain people, whether it be Eduardo, whether it be Jesse Eisenberg's Mark Zuckerberg, or whether it be the Winklevosses. And I told you on the episode we did, a Fincher episode, I was like kind of feeling the Winklevosses. Like I was like, damn, dude, yeah, you did get screwed. Go get your money, bro.
Yeah.
Like one of my favorite, and this is all Sorkin, so... remember I told you on the episode too, I said, I'm 6'4", 240 pounds, and there's two of me.
Yeah.
It's like, damn, bro. But basically that's kind of the vibe. Like everyone kind of has, like, you're right, their own way of speaking in this movie, and their own presence of who they are, right? Because Mark Zuckerberg feels superior to everyone, and he won't let certain things go even though it's like, dude, you have so much money, just let it go. And he's like, no, I won't let it go because I'm blah, 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 blah. And he goes off on little rants.
Right.
So, like Rashida Jones at the end of the movie, where she's like, just settle. Just pay them off. Why are you doing this crap?
Right.
Like, you're making it so much worse. But you have to prove your point because you're smarter than everyone else. But that's kind of the vibe of the movie. The vibe of the movie is smarter, better than everyone else. Is Eduardo better than me because he got into your fraternity?
Right. Hey.
Or is Zuckerberg better because he's smarter and he created the Facebook? Or the Winklevoss, I can't say the name. Winklevoss is better because they're more athletic, they're better looking, they come from old money, and they're smart, right? But they still are maybe not the most self-aware. Maybe they're not as smart as they think they are. That's kind of the whole vibe the movie gets, right? Where it's like, who is superior to who? And does that, desperation to become superior overshadow them, I guess you could say.
Right.
And kind of take over their whole idea of life because they want to be better.
Yeah,
they want to prove themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And it is, going back to self expectations, right? The idea of how Grotto his parents expect him to be a businessman, and how he has his financial and his business all locked down, but in the end he ultimately doesn't. And how the Winklevosses have this expectation of not getting screwed over by people because they are high ranked in their fraternity, and they are high caliber crew rollers,
Yeah.
So I think that's a big part of it. And I also think what really helps this movie in terms of understanding how each character feels is the structure. And I think that's going back to the screenplay, how having the court scenes, or I guess not court, but the
deposition.
The deposition scenes.
Hearing?
Yeah, the hearing scenes intercut with what's actually happening, because it recontextualizes a lot of what we see on screen. It kind of brings the text, the subtext up to the text, where you actually understand. Like they'll be like, how did you, or they'll show a scene and then they'll cut back to the disposition and be like, how did it feel to get screwed over by your best friend? And then it'll add a whole nother layer to what was before. So
when you actually see it visually on screen.
Right, exactly. So I think that's what's brilliant about this movie, and how especially from a script level, is able to highlight those emotions and highlight those feels. So then at the end, you have a full and true understanding of how each character comes to understand each other. And I think that's even talking about the Justin Timberlake character. When we first meet him, is cutting back. Sean Parker. When we're cutting back from Ecuador to that dinner that they're having at the table, to the disposition, you understand, like, no, Ecuador really doesn't like this guy, and you could clearly see it throughout the dinner, and you could it adds just a whole nother layer to it. So I really love that for it.
Yeah. This is definitely like Sorkin to the T.
Yeah, it's my favorite Sorkin movie.
Absolutely, I mean, he kills this movie. How much do you feel credit is deserved to Sorkin and credit is deserved to, damn it, I forget his name.
Fincher. David Fincher. I think you credit both, because at least according to the behind the scenes features, Fincher is very good at collaborating with Sorkin, right? Where again, I kind of talked about how his dialogue's very repetitive. So Fincher would come in a lot of times and be like, hey, we should just pare this down to like what we need, and it'll work a lot better for Fincher as a director and for the script overall. And they weren't like telling him like edit the script this way, but they're like suggestions, and taking those suggestions and incorporating that into the script ultimately led to the greatness that is The Social Network. And I think especially considering something that is made by Sorkin and Fincher, who, two older gentlemen to say the least. They're not old. Hope Sorkin, if you listen to this, you're not old. Fincher, you're not old.
This is the part where Sorkin removed his headphones and looked up. All of a sudden, he's like, I'm done listening to this podcast. It's over.
No. But
Sorkin pauses this right now.
Right. He's just like, fuck
it's
it.
done.
Yeah.
It's over. I was just about to hire that RB3 guy.
hey, whoa, hire me still, please. God damn it. Like, give me a job, But yeah, no, he has an arc, and I mean the story has an arc that reflects like a younger generation, and in the sense that these two older dudes are able to understand in an interesting way, but also materialize in a way that everybody is able to empathize with the characters and with the Zuckerberg portrayal here that feels natural and real. So.
Speaking of Sorkin and speaking of Fincher and speaking of The Social Network, I think we have to blame people for something, and I think we can blame Sorkin and we can blame Fincher for this. This was probably, and I know I'm obviously exaggerating, and I'm obviously playing something right now that RB3 doesn't know what I'm doing, but this is obviously what got Jesse Eisenberg the role of Lex Luthor. This was basically his Lex audition, and they were like, do what you did in The Social Network, but do it like, imagine if you were like super crazy and you had like a stutter problem and you're really freaking weird. Like you're Mark Zuckerberg, but weirder. Yeah. And he's like, I can do that. And now we got the worst ever Lex Luthor to be portrayed on screen.
To be fair, I think that's an interesting approach to take a Lex Luthor, at least in
it wasn't. It was terrible. It sounds good on paper, but then when you see it on screen, you're like, what the hell was that? He's like, I'm really smart. I totally know this, but Superman and the other guy, and I totally know what I'm doing, but sorry. And it's like, dude, what are you doing? No! Stop! No! Well, that's not what I want to see.
Yeah, he was playing a bit of a cartoon. I think having the idea of like having an idea of like the whole idea of Lex Luthor is that he's a tech billionaire, right?
Sure. I get it. Yeah, it's like this is the new front.
This is how tech billionaires look now. That being said, though, if you really listen to like Mark Zuckerberg talk, he doesn't talk the way Jesse Eisenberg talks in this movie.
Sure.
If you look at the way a lot of big tech people talk, they're not doing it like that. Yeah. So they I feel like maybe you're talking about how that's an audition for the Lex Luthor. So. Yeah, he's playing a cartoon of that version of Mark Zuckerberg.
Exactly.
But I feel like if you're playing like the real Mark Zuckerberg, who is not like daddy problems, lollipops, or what was it the
Jolly Ranchers.
Jolly Ranchers, yeah. Oh, Jolly
Ranchers. Dude, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen.
It's a little much, yeah.
I don't know. They were like, do Mark Zuckerberg, but if you're like the Riddler, Jim Carrey's Riddler. Yeah. Imagine you're Jim Carrey's Riddler doing Mark Zuckerberg's Lex Luthor. It's like, why? No, don't do that. Oh. Damn it, Sorkin! This is your fault. Yeah, it's all your fault. He removes his headphones. He's like, I'm done with this podcast.
They blaming Batman and Superman on me. No, I think if I really do mean this though. I think it was an interesting idea. I think if you were to go, because Mark Zuckerberg, he kind of talks like he talks like he has a little he's slower when he talks.
Sure.
Not in a bad way, but. Not like slower, but he talks fast, but like in a slower manner.
Him dumb, bro?
No, not dumb. Probably one of the smartest men like in the world. Definitely, he's one of the richest, right? Jeff Bezos too, another rich guy. But they don't talk like So I think if you were to like have an accurate portrayal of that and have it be like a menacing version of what they're going for,
it would have been cool.
Worked, yeah,
absolutely. But they didn't do that, and they gave us the crap that was. What single-handedly destroyed the DC cinematic universe.
Single-handedly?
That's why we're doing a reboot, guys.
Hey, no. Well, he was at the end of...
Hashtag reboot.
How'd you feel about him?
Hashtag release the Snyder Cut.
Yeah, I was going to say, how'd you feel about him at the end of
it was terrible.
Justice League?
It was
end of Justice League?
It was terrible. Are you kidding me? It was ridiculous. I was like, no, I'm good. I'm done. It's over. I'm done. No.
Yeah.
It's the worst.
I would have been interested in seeing that Snyder Cut where like where Slade Wilson actually breaks him out of prison.
Yeah.
That would have been dope.
Yeah, and then cuts his head off. Let's move on to Moneyball.
Moneyball, Brad Pitt.
Yeah, Moneyball is another one because it's an adaptation from a book. Right? Am I right or am I right? Okay, cool. It's an adaptation from a book starring Brad Pitt. And this is another very Sorkin, quick, smart dialogue, specifically with the Jonah Hill character.
Right.
And this is such a... Like, rewatching this movie, because I rewatched it on Friday, it's such an interesting thing to make a movie about numbers in baseball, right? Because that's such a weird pitch for a movie.
Right.
And yet it got a lot of attention when it came out. I mean, obviously it got a bunch of, like, nominations and stuff, too. But it's one of those things where it's something that's a little bit unknown in the baseball. Well, it's not unknown, but it's a little bit unknown for the average fan, I guess you could say. The
Right.
stats crunching and the number crunching and the players and the runs and all that stuff that I don't know much about. But the movie attempts to teach you, even if you're a novice, it attempts to teach you what's going on, and it has that super Sorkin feel of like the quick, fast, smart dialogue and the people who cannot keep up with a smarter character.
Yeah, yeah. No,
What are your thoughts on this one?
I love Moneyball. I remember watching this movie in theaters, and I forget the exact name of the guy who directed it, but he also did Foxcatcher and Capone. But he brought like a different style than what the Social Network
It's
brings.
Bennett Miller.
Bennett Miller, yeah, Bennett Miller. And again, it's like it's a very non-traditional take to the sports movie. And again, I think it further highlights the theme of Sorkin's filmography in the sense that it's the behind the scenes of the glamour, right? Of the fame and what we perceive as regular audience members, and how the events. It's the Oakland A's, right? That are the team.
Yeah.
How these events and how this methodology and the strategy of recruiting baseball players and using players and using statistics to better justify player decisions. How that actually influenced the rest of baseball to this day. So I think Sorkin bringing that to life, he obviously has a very good sense of understanding how this fundamentally changed baseball, how the numbers crunching actually ended up working. But I think it's also a cool character evaluation of something like Brad Pitt, whose character is at the end of his wit, trying to fix his team and ultimately doing the best he can with that.
Sure,
So,
and it's also like a commentary on failure in something that you thought you were going to succeed in and attempt to succeed in a different area that is similar to that area, right? Because he goes from being a baseball player to becoming like a baseball
baseball
recruiter,
manager,
right?
yeah,
Recruiter first,
I
and
think-
then a manager.
Yeah,
And then he kind of develops this knowledge of how to manage baseball players and where to put them and how many to get and how much money you have to spend based on that, right?
Right.
And it's also commentary on what he says in the movie is that, the only way you can win is if you have a crap ton of money. If you're the Yankees, the Cubs, or like he named like a bunch of teams that have so much money and that they don't know what to do with it. The Red Sox were another one.
Right.
Because if you're the A's or if you're like another small town team, you're probably not going to get far
Right.
because of what you have. So that's a very interesting thing too. It's also interesting because a lot of people don't know about when it comes to trading. I love that stuff, dude. When it comes to, you imagine, man, playing with people's careers and kind of people's lives in general as if they're trading cards.
Right.
Hey, man, I give you 2 of mine for one of those. It's like, nah, man, give me 2 of yours and that plus $5. And it's like, all right, you got a deal.
Right.
Hey, Jimmy, you're off the team, bro. It's like,
Yeah.
what, bro? No.
Yeah.
But I just bought a house, though.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Oh,
it really is, and he actually talks about that in the movie, how hard it is to tell someone no, or that you're fired, or that you're being traded,
Yeah.
and that sign here you have no say, that you're basically signing your life away to the team and what they can do with you. So that's also an interesting aspect that I've always found fascinating in American sports, and I mean any sport too, but just in football they do that a lot too when they trade players and they all move around. If you see a documentary show called Hard Knocks, they talk about that a lot. It's such a good show, but it talks about how difficult that is, and I love how that movie addresses it. And it really talks about how trading players like they're trading cards is an awful job, but if it's what you have to do, then you might as well do it to the best of your ability, I guess you can say.
Right,
So-
right. No, I think that's definitely something that the movie addresses head on. I think it's just interesting that for sports in particular, a competition that's so heavily based on numbers and scores, how nobody ever thought to use mathematics and statistics to kind of go around and use players like that. But Jonah Hill's character, illustrating that in this film is really fascinating and interesting. And that's not to mention the rest of the cast too. Philip Seymour Hoffman is in this one as well. Chris Pratt, very young Chris Pratt,
Yeah.
right? And overall, I think that the way that Robin Wright plays,
That's right. When I saw her, I was like, "Holy crap, that's Robin Wright!" What?
right,
Yeah.
Brad Pitt's ex-wife.
But it really is the Brad Pitt show.
Yeah.
He's in like almost every scene in this movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill, but Brad Pitt really leads the movie, for sure, and you kind of see where he's coming from as a character,
right? And it's not, it's about baseball, but it's not really about baseball. It's about Brad Pitt's character, and you get that from the ending, right? When he's like, the whole time he doesn't like to watch baseball games, so he's just like listening to it in his car as he's driving around. So I think you really do get understanding that it's coming from his perspective throughout the entire picture.
Yeah.
So
absolutely, no, it's a great movie, and it really is an interesting one. That. What do you feel like Sorkin does differently in this movie that it wouldn't be for anything else?
Well, I don't think he wrote this movie alone, right? He
didn't.
wrote it with Steve
Zalian?
Yeah,
Steven Zalian?
Yeah, Steven Zalian. So it's a little bit different. It's not really it's witty, but it's not really as quick wit, and there's not much walking and talking as there is in a lot of other Sorkin material.
Sure.
I think that plays a big part of it, and I think it's also due to the fact that, like I said, it's very numbers oriented. So it's not really you get a lot of personality coming through the performers, I think, more than you do the actual script.
Sure.
And it's not really it's not really as narratively different as many other Sorkin films are. But cool. I still enjoy it. I still love it, and think that's probably one of Sorkin's better recent films. And I think it's definitely Ben Miller, the director. I think it's one of his best, because I enjoy Foxcatcher, but I really love Moneyball for the way it illustrates and it brings something new to the table that many people had never really considered and looking at sports movies.
And it's also like it shows a different aspect of sports in general, where every time you ask a question like, what does that person do on the team? Like, what is their job? Like, you finally get to see what every time someone says, ESPN says, certain GM has been fired. You finally get to see what a GM does.
Right.
And they do a lot.
Right.
They're basically like, in this Brad Pitt is basically like the coach in the movie. Mm-hmm. Like, he's kind of the coach in this team.
Right.
He
decides kind of the lineup for a lot of these people.
Yeah, and that kind of dictates your entire team and your entire season, basically. Mm-hmm. So the importance of a good GM, is so important. That's why I'm calling out right now my Phoenix Suns. Come on, guys. Get it together, man. We got a good team, but, man, that front office is whack, bro.
Oh, man.
We begged Kevin Love to play with us. We begged him. We were offering him, like, freaking $68 million or something.
$68 million?
Yeah, we offered him a lot of money, and he was like, "Nah, I'm going to the Cavs." What now, Kevin Love? Yeah. Having problems with LeBron, bro? No,
yeah, LeBron's getting ready to take out of there. Come on to the Lakers, LB or LJ. Yeah, LeBron.
No, man.
Lakers, we're looking for you.
I'm still hurt. Anyways, having a good general manager is important, a.k.a. come on, Phoenix Suns. Right. But let's move on to Sorkin's next movie, which I believe is Steve Jobs. Yeah, Steve Jobs.
Yeah. Of course, the Newsroom came in.
The Newsroom, I just want to see something real quick.
Yeah.
Newsroom, though, is like my shit. I love that show. That show is so good. I used to watch that like religiously. I was so into that damn show, man. Mm-hmm. It legit it excited me, and it was so weird because I'm watching behind the scenes of like a newsroom, and it's just exciting to me. And it was really cool to see the TV world in a different world, if that makes any sense.
Right.
And I know we don't want to talk about it, but I just got to say that I love the Newsroom.
No, it's another example of the behind the scenes of what we see, what we see on TV. And I know the show was very controversial when it was out, right?
Oh,
a lot of people loved it, a lot of people hated it.
I know a lot of people who hated it.
Yeah.
But I was the one who loved it, yeah.
Yeah, but I think it was kind of cool how they weaved in like real life events and like weaved those into the storyline.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that show's really interesting, and I think again, it's just another example of Sorkin. He has other shows too, like Sports Night, that's also about late night, or I guess not late night, but sports journalism more in particular. So yeah, I think that's, I'm excited to see if Sorkin ever gets back to TV.
Yeah.
But he's obviously focused on the movie still now.
Sure.
And hopefully he stays interested in it, because Steve Jobs didn't perform well when it came out.
And think about this: when the Steve Jobs script was out there, and they were like, Sorkin, Steve Jobs, remember that?
Yeah, it was the most buzzed about.
Oh,
thing
it was
Hollywood.
so buzzed about. Yeah. Everyone was like, someone has to direct this movie. Sorkin did a Steve Jobs script that is apparently amazing.
Fincher was attached. Yeah. Scott Rudin, the guy who directed Social Network, was on. He wanted to bring in, And then Christian Bale wanted to star.
Christian
as
Bale,
Steve
Leo
Jobs.
DiCaprio
Leo
wanted to do it
DiCaprio.
for a moment.
Yeah,
It was one of the most like highly wanted scripts that I've seen in years, dude. It was something else. Remember that?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
right.
crazy. And what we got was obviously Danny Boyle putting in his own angle to it, but eventually it did eventually feel like more of a Sorkin movie than anything else. I don't know if you disagree with me on that.
No, I think the script is essentially what this movie is.
The script is the movie, yeah.
Right, and I think partially, and that's a lot to do with the actual structure of it. A lot of times when we look at scripts, we look at the structure as Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, three separate events that three moments in the script that all define different characteristics: the setup, the conflict, and the resolution. I think that's where the movie is ultimately a big example of the 3-act structure, right? First act being set in, I forget exactly what year, 1984 or something.
Ooh,
like that?
don't ask me about years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think the second part is 1998, and then the last part is 1998. If I'm not mistaken,
You said
probably
98
wrong.
twice, just so you know.
Oh, I'm sorry. The second was 88. I mean,
80.
and then this third one is 90. I'm probably wrong on all these years. I'm sorry. Like, I'm probably so off.
Basically, they were all before the big launches.
Right, all before big launches of specific Apple products. And I know it's a big part of the backlash of this movie is that a lot of it's fictionalized and how they, all these events didn't take place in the exact time and order that they are portrayed in this movie. And I think that's where a lot of people, the historical accuracy of it, makes a lot of people upset, to say
Sure.
the least. But I enjoy that. I think there's something
Me
to be.
too. I thought it was like the best part of the movie.
Exactly.
It's the structure of the movie.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said about. Being able to take real life events and reinterpret them to an artist, whatever an artist is trying to say, whenever they're trying to portray. And I think Sorkin did that really well in this movie, particularly. And I think Boyle has a good hand in understanding how that structure works too, by dividing each way the section shot. First section being shot 16 millimeter, second section 35 millimeter, last part in digital. So there's obviously a clear understanding of what's being said here, and I think especially when you're looking at the 3 acts and how they build up top of each other, at the end we have a great resolution of good catharsis of it at the end. So.
Yeah, absolutely, and it really is. Like we talked about a little bit of what makes a Sorkin script, and a lot of that we agreed was how quick and how smart the dialogue is. This one is that times 10.
Right.
This is all dialogue, all fast, all smart, all literally screaming at you to keep up. Hey, keep up, because it's like going so fast and so like heavy language and big words and like trying to get inside the mind of a genius who is Steve Jobs, right? How do you feel like that works and how that translated in film?
I love it, man. I love it. Well, I love when characters talk, like they know what they're talking about.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
And especially Steve Jobs in this movie, again, there's a debate of whether or not that's the real Steve Jobs.
That was my next question, but I was gonna save that. Yeah.
Right. But no, but the way that character is portrayed in this movie is really, really fascinating. In the fact that he's an egomaniac who abuses a lot of his workers and treats a lot of people like shit. But then towards the end, and again, builds upon each other, each act, you kind of have more of a heart for him, right? You kind of get where he's coming from, at least in the sense that he is able to empathize and understand more of the people around him more and more as time goes by.
I was gonna say, a lot of people did feel that negative aspect of how they portrayed Steve Jobs in a very negative light,
Right?
Because he is kind of a major dick in this movie.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that, as far as why Sorkin chose to do that?
Right. Well,
And do you feel like that's accurate to what Steve Jobs is? Obviously, you don't know Steve Jobs, but do you
Right.
feel like he was trying to make more of a caricature, or he knew that Steve Jobs was an asshole and he was just going to be real about it?
Well, you know what I think it is, and I read the book that this is based on. I think it was just called Steve Jobs when it came. It came out right after he died.
Sure.
And essentially, what it is in the book, and I think a lot of people firsthand accounts of Steve Jobs can tell you this. He was an asshole for a lot of the time, but then the more you knew him and the more you understood him, he becomes more and more compassionate. And
Sure.
like, particularly towards the end of his life, he was just a genuinely nice guy. So then a lot of times when people who, knew Steve Jobs come out against this movie and say, don't support this movie, is because later in life, everybody just knows Steve is just this really nice, caring, funny guy. But at the moments in time that this movie is set and portrayed, he was largely recognized as a giant asshole, essentially,
Sure.
as the guy who's a genius who doesn't really do anything, but he's good at yelling at people,
Sure.
and making people feel bad about themselves. And I think that's that's where a lot of the controversy comes in terms of that. So
What do you feel like this movie has to say about the relationship with his daughter too?
yeah, no, I think that's where the real emotional heart of the film is, because correct me if I'm mistaken, but in the first act you don't even see his daughter, right?
Oh, isn't she? No, you're right. I don't think you're right.
Yeah, I think in the first act you don't see
absolutely
her.
right. Yeah.
And in the second act she's a little kid, and then the third act she's an adult.
Yeah.
So I think that reflects the exact character arc that he's in the first act. He doesn't even see his daughter as his daughter. He doesn't see her as himself. But then as time progresses and he starts to see that there's something special about this girl, she goes to like an advanced school, an elevated school, and she excels in that. Particularly, we understand that, I believe, in the second act, and you understand that she starts to care for him more and more too. Like she hugs him and says that she wants to stay with him because she didn't love, I guess, the mother situation. By the way, who plays the mother in this movie?
Oh, so bad at this.
She was also in Inherent Vice. Paul Thomas Anderson too. We're gonna get to you one of these days soon.
Maybe
Catherine Waterston. Yeah, she's great in this movie. Michael Stuhlbarg's in this too, right?
Oh my
God,
God.
my man, Michael Stuhlbarg, man, he's in
go.
everything great, man. Give that man an Oscar, goddammit. But yeah, no, so yeah. Again, that whole emotional arc and journey that we embark in as Steve Jobs's through the eyes of Steve Jobs' daughter, Jobs' daughter, is really fascinating and interesting. And I think we get perspectives of Steve through different characters as well, even through his homie, who I can't remember the name off the top, but Seth Rogen plays him.
Yep.
He has a very dynamic relationship too.
Steve Wozniak.
Steve Wozniak, there you go. Who a lot of people credit for being the actual inventor of a lot of stuff.
But to be honest, though, that's my whole thing too, because it's a team thing, dude. Because if you don't have a Steve Jobs to Steve Wozniak's creation, you don't have an Apple. You just don't.
Yeah.
Because it really takes someone who can tell you what something is. Mm-hmm. And I know that's what he says in the movie too. He's like, no, you need to explain this shit to people who can understand it, and then they can buy your product.
Right.
That's kind of the whole point of like the movie, but that's my thoughts.
Yeah, but I mean, what do you think, like, in this portrayal of Steve Jobs?
I just think what you said, everything is true. Like, from people who know him, it's like, no, that guy was a dick, though.
Yeah.
He really was. Like, R.I.P. and all that, but he was a dick, bro.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, man, for me, the thing that stands out the most in this movie, obviously the Sorkin script, like we talked about, but it's Michael Fassbender, dude. Mm-hmm. Michael freaking Fassbender, one of the greatest actors working today, in my opinion. And in my opinion, who deserved the Oscar that year was Michael Fassbender for Steve Jobs. Come at me.
Who?
Like
what one?
Leo DiCaprio for The Revenant.
Oh yeah, good. Yeah,
dude. Michael Fassbender had the most lines of dialogue, the most transformational character that he had to do, and Leo had a lot of painful moments. A lot of people stepping on him and stuff, and it was painful, and it was good acting, but it's just two very different types of acting. And I feel like Michael Fassbender deserved that Oscar that year by a lot, by a long shot.
Right.
But obviously he didn't get it. But
yeah, no, I
thought he was incredible in this movie.
Yeah, he's magnetic, and I think that whole scene towards the end when him and Stuhlbarg's character Andy are having that big argument, where you come to understand that Andy was really paying his daughter's tuition while she was at Harvard. And then after he leaves, he has that like moment where he's just standing on the table and like rehearsing his lines, but you could just see all the emotion just draining out of him. And another credit to Danny Boyle is like the camera rotates as he's like doing that, and then it cuts like flashes of him seeing his daughter there. Just so powerful, like all the way around. I think he knows. For one, he doesn't really look like Steve Jobs, but he knows how Steve, how at least how we see Steve Jobs.
Sure.
And he knows the power hungry, the egomaniaisms of somebody who would run a company like Apple and who would create this gigantic empire.
Yeah.
And I think that's just overall really fascinating and interesting to look at performance wise.
Sure.
I think I was mistaken though. I think the daughter is in the first act, but she's very small part she's a very small part and very little kid.
I forgive you, RB3.
But that scene where he first when she first comes into I think the room, and Mike and Steve Jobs or Mike Fassbender has her like trace her name on the computer.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's very simple, but there's a very like layered in how he portrays that kind of stuff. So it's just overall it's just genius to me.
Dude, yeah, this movie's great. Where would you rank this as far as like a Sorkin script for you?
To me, it's probably if I'm being honest, my number 2.
Okay.
Because I remember watching this movie and just being enthralled with it overall.
Did you remember, I don't know if you remember this, but I remember when the critics came out of it, they didn't think it was that great.
Right.
Like it got good reviews, but it didn't get great reviews. Mm-hmm. A lot of critics were like, nah. And then I saw it and I was like, damn.
Yeah.
That was really freaking good.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Well, I think the historical part of it played a lot into people's reviews of it. And I think a large part of it also had to do with the fact that it was coming out. 2015 was a year that we're seeing a lot of different movies coming to the forefront. Like it was like Mad Max, it was like we're being inundated. I think to me that's when I first started to see a big divide between the indies and the blockbusters, and this was something that kind of lied in between. And it's very like hard hitting too. Like it's very on the nose when it comes to like its symbolism. Like that whole scene when Steve and when Steve's breaking down his plan to like Kate Winslet's character, and then like at like the screens behind them change into like a rocket machine, like or a rocket exploding in the sky. Like it's very on the nose, what I mean? But to me that's what I love about it. I think I love the fact that it's a very on the nose script in terms of how it's structured and how everything is set, but it's also very on the nose from a direction standpoint as well, from a visual standpoint, and even to the point where before a scene will start, like Danny Boyle and his editors will like incorporate a little visual cue before the scene would get there, and then as soon as the scene hits, it will just like spark. And so I love everything that this movie represents and that's about. And I think one more thing about the Sorkin script, from we talk about how it's how he likes to do a lot of the walk and talks. This movie pretty much set entirely inside until the very end, and I think that's completely on purpose, right? How each scene feels like its own contained, secure environment for Jobs. Only time he has to step out of his comfort zone is going outside and speaking to his daughter. Yeah. So I think that's really.
It's very symbolic.
Yeah.
It's extremely symbolic.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
it is, too, like you said.
Yeah. And there's one other scene that he's outside, too, and that's another scene that he's being questioned by Wozniak. So, again, times of pressure, he's being pressed a little bit harder and harder at each occasion. Yeah. And my favorite moment of this movie kind of happens when Jeff Daniels is going back and telling that whole story of the night he got fired. To me, that was wonderful.
That's great, dude.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Let's finish up with Molly's Game, which is obviously a movie that everybody's seen, including Mr. RB3.
I gotta say, I didn't get around to seeing Molly's Game.
We were supposed to see this movie, so I'll talk about it a little bit because I don't want to, obviously I won't spoil it, but I don't want to give you too much to go off of. I like going in blind to movies.
Okay.
But this movie is like Sorkin times 10. It's very Sorkin. The entire movie starts out with a VO. Mm-hmm. So if you don't like VO, it's over.
Oh, really? Okay.
So it's Jessica Chastain. She's doing a voiceover character. And it's super quick, super witty, super Sorkin. And it takes place of her telling her story, and it takes place with meetings with her lawyer, her current. Like, so it's going back and forth between two time periods.
Right.
Very, very, very similar to The Social Network, where it's like the hearing and then cuts back to like, you know, times and moments and stuff that's happening.
Right.
The only difference is that the VO is extremely heavy-handed. So it's very much telling you like, let me tell you the story about how I met Jimmy John and how he became blah blah blah, and like she kind of tells you what's going on. Jessica Chastain is obviously great in the movie. I don't feel like she's necessarily a snub for the Academy Awards, however.
Okay.
But that's just me being honest. I think she's great in the movie. I just feel like she's still better in Zero Dark 30.
Yeah.
That's the movie?
Yeah. She won for that, right?
Yeah, she did, yeah.
No.
She did?
That was the year Jennifer Lawrence won, I think.
Oh, she was nominated, though,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, she was nominated.
Gotcha.
To me, I think Jennifer Lawrence. Chastain should have won instead of Jennifer Lawrence.
What did she win for? Lawrence?
Silver Linings Playbook.
Oh, yeah. Jessica Chastain's better in Zero Dark 30.
Yeah, I agree.
But it's still a great movie. I still highly recommend it. Idris Elba is amazing. Obviously, I love that guy, and he's great in this movie too. It's just very much the Jessica Chastain movie. It's very interesting though because it's all about poker and underground poker like games and stuff like that, and it talks about certain celebrities that play poker, and when you find out like they don't say it in the movie, but I looked it up afterwards.
Oh, really?
I was like, yo.
Yeah.
I was like, it really makes you question like certain celebrities that they don't know they're so rich they don't know what to do with money, and poker is like an addiction, basically.
It takes place in the 80s, doesn't it? Something like that?
No, it takes place in the 2000s.
Oh, okay, so it's recent.
It's like 2000. Oh, it's really recent.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
oh, wow.
like
okay.
the hearing and all that, the deposition is like in 2010.
Oh, really?
It's
okay.
like super recent.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't know why I thought it was a period piece.
No,
for some reason.
I think it starts out like 2001 or 2002.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's I highly recommend watching it, specifically because of what Sorkin does as far as opening up the world of something you didn't know about.
Right.
Because it's something that I don't even know anything about poker, but they tell me everything what I need to know and exactly what's important.
Do they explain poker pretty good in this, or?
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But in a way, it also tells you to keep up, and it tells you to catch up in certain things.
Oh, okay. But is understanding the game of poker essential to understanding how this movie? Okay.
No.
Yeah.
They break it down, and they actually visually break it down too.
Oh, really?
They're like, look, this person has this card, blah, 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 and he's bluffing here, and they show it to like visual,
okay.
like literally visual, like someone is like animation coming out at you and telling you what's going on as far as the poker game.
Right.
So and Michael Cera's in this movie, and
Michael
Cera plays an interesting role in this movie, and I you should watch it just to see what he's in.
Oh man, I really want to see that.
Yeah, man.
So from a directing standpoint, how does Sorkin?
It's great. It's absolutely super well directed. You can't even tell that it's a first time director.
Oh, really?
It feels like it's someone who's been doing it for a while, and it very much is like Sorkin is just like a natural when it comes to that stuff. So
yeah. Do you think he's taken from like other people? Sorry to cut you off, but do you think he's taken from like Rob Reiner or like Fincher or the previous directors he's worked with?
Kind of. I think he's just mainly kind of combining everything he's learned.
Okay.
Kind of just like taking what he's learned and then making his own style and making his own brand. But I highly recommend watching it. It's very much a Sorkin movie, and it's a Sorkin script, and it's really the reason why we did this podcast in the first place.
Right. Even though I didn't see
even though you didn't.
I think there's something to be said though. It's interesting that pretty much every Sorkin movie is based off of previous subject material.
That's true. That's very true. He's very good at adapted screenplays.
Yeah.
Like he's very good at adapting certain things and making it into screenplays that work. Because that's a talent too. Like a lot of people feel like adapted is diminished versus original. Like a lot when they compare original to adapted screenplay. A lot of people are like, "Oh, original's better because it's original." It's like, well, adapted's tough too because you got to pick and choose what's important, and you got to pick and choose how to say and what to say it because it's a different medium, right? Because translating a book to a movie is very different.
Right.
So,
and I mean, I've said on a Schmoes No Show before, I always kind of feel like that whole debate of adapted versus original is kind of pointless because a lot of times original movies are based off of either like real life events or something personal, or just is based off of other stories.
Sure.
You know, and if something is adapted, that doesn't like diminish it.
Sure.
I think particularly in the case of Sorkin, I mean, a lot of times he's basing it off of a book, but he's very loosely based. Like the Social Network is very loosely based off.
It's
of
more
that.
ideas that he gets from that book.
Exactly. The Steve Jobs movie is a perfect example. Has nothing to do with the book.
Yeah.
The book, but is about the character.
Sure.
So I think that's really
Any ideas that he gets from it,
Right,
which is great.
right.
Absolutely. Cool. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that episode. Hopefully you like Aaron Sorkin as much as we do, and you're fans of him, and you want to rewatch this episode of the Meaning of Podcast and send it to Mr. Aaron Sorkin so he can hear RB3 shit talking about him and never hire him for a Hollywood movie ever.
Hey, Aaron Sorkin, you're my guy, man. You're my guy.
But obviously, guys, we appreciate you guys. We appreciate you listening all the way through. Leave us any comments. Tell us what is your favorite Sorkin script. What do you feel like is Sorkin-isms or Sorkin stuff that he puts into every single one of his movies? What's the underlying theme in all of his movies as well? Let us know in the comments down below. Please be coming back for more, guys. We do appreciate your watching, and we do appreciate you listening to this episode and supporting us in all this adventurous stuff that we do.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'm Ace.
This is RB3.
And we are peacing out, guys. Thanks for listening to the Meaning of Podcast.